Hi guys, so it is the end of 2014, so I thought I would bring you my favorite books that I've read in 2014. The book that I'm currently reading, which is Edith Wharton's House of Mirth, I don't think I will finish in time as New Year's Eve is tomorrow and I work early in the morning, and yeah, I just don't think I'm going to be getting it done. So I just thought I'd go over the books that I have read so far and just tell you what I thought was the best. These are in no particular order, they're just kind of in the order that I pulled them off my shelf. So, starting with Richard Adams' Watership Down. I have the 40th anniversary edition, which is really, really pretty. It's got this watercolor thing. This is an epic in miniature. It's basically the story of a bunch of rabbits trying to find a new home. I really love this. I thought the story was great. It is a little bit problematic in the way that it deals with females. In the case that they are really only used for breeding. However, I would counter this by arguing that the female rabbits of Aswala, and I'm probably mispronouncing that, but the militant warren that they invade are the leaders of the rebellion in that warren. So they're not entirely for breeding, just mostly, so that is a little problematic, but it is a very well done book. I would highly recommend it. Next up is one I read in the summer, and it is The Island of Dr. Moreau by H.G. Wells. This was the second Wells novel I read this year. Actually, it's more like a novella. It's pretty short. The first one being The Time Machine, but this one really, really grabbed me. Honestly, this was fantastic. It's science fiction. It deals with vivisection or dealing with turning animals into humanoid type creatures. If you're into that kind of thing, highly recommend it. Next up is one I wasn't sure I was going to include on this list just because I mostly read it in 2013 and just finished it up in 2014, but it still counts on 2014 for my Goodreads, and that is North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell. Basically, if you like Pride and Prejudice, I highly recommend this. It is set during the Industrial Revolution in the north of England. Very wonderful, fantastic, class struggles, geographical struggles, like north versus south, that kind of thing. England, brilliant. Read it. Next up is E.M. Forster's Howard's End, which I think is probably my second favorite novel that I read this year. I read this at the suggestion of Katie over at Effusions of Wit, and I absolutely fell in love with this. We did do a buddy read of Zadie Smith's On Beauty, which is a retelling of Howard's End, which I hated. Both Katie and Jason from Heavy Blanks loved it, so don't necessarily take my opinion on it. I just really found On Beauty problematic. But I really enjoyed Howard's End. I thought it was wonderful. Another one of those, if you are a fan of Jane Austen, check this one out. Next up is, I think, my favorite book of the year. I probably should have saved this one for last, but it just came up in the pile. Is Shirley Jackson's We Have Always Lived in the Castle. This should come as no surprise. I got this for my birthday from my friend Cassie from Germany. We always send each other books for birthdays and Christmas, and this is the one she sent me for my birthday back in September. I literally read this in a night and fell madly in love with Shirley Jackson. I have since read The Haunting of Hill House and The Hangsaman, two of her other works, and I do have some other ones sitting on my shelf that I'm looking forward to reading. Highly recommend this if you like creepy gothic novels. Yeah, this was just literally fantastic. Blew my mind. Constantly think about it still months later. Like, this is like the best. Yeah. Next up is George Eliot's Middlemarch. I am showing you my drop cap edition, not my cloth-bound edition, just because my cloth-bound edition is a little bit damaged from actually reading it, which I find really disappointing about the the cloth-bound editions. I much prefer the drop cap editions. I find them very readable. This is another one that if you are a fan of Jane Austen and that kind of thing, I would recommend. This spans years. It's kind of, not a lot happens. So if you're not big on books that don't have a really fast-moving plot with a lot of action points, I would not recommend this for you. If you are okay with dealing with day-to-day lives of people and find that really fascinating, definitely check this out. I think I read this in like 3 days and it's like 800 pages. Yeah, it's over 800 pages. So, but it is, for me, it was a fantastically quick read. Next up, should come as no surprise, The Tenant of Wildfell Hall, Anne Bronte. This might actually be tied with Howard's End for second favorite. It's definitely in the top 3, I would say. I'm looking at like the rest of the books and I'm like, I think this is definitely in the top 3. Honestly, Anne Bronte, my dear, I love you so much. I'm so sad you only wrote 2 books. Agnes Grey, her other book, I also read this year, also fantastic. Preferred The Tenant of Wildfell Hall, I think because I read it first. But definitely check out Anne Bronte. She is nothing like her other 2 sisters. Honestly, I think Kate Beaton sums it up best in her comment on Dude Watching with the Bronte Sisters, I think is the title if you want to Google that. Oh, Anne, I love you. Another one, if you are a big fan of Jane Austen and her ilk, I would definitely recommend this. Yeah, fantastic. Also, she's like super feminist and it's fantastic and she doesn't take shit from anybody and it's just great. Dodie Smith's I Capture the Castle. I read this right after Middlemarch and similarly I fell in love with this. I actually recently just rewatched the movie, which has Henry Cavill in, and that's basically the selling point of the movie, is that it has Henry Cavill in it. But yeah, this was fantastic. I love this turn of the century fiction. Apparently this is like a children's classic. I think it's a little bit mature for children, but I love this. This was a really quick read, mostly because the font is bleeding huge, despite the fact that it's like 600 pages. I will link this copy down below. I get a lot of asks about where I got this copy. I'll try and link everything down below, in fact, for you guys to purchase from Book Depository, which ships worldwide. Yeah, honestly, this is the story of Cassandra and her sister and their father and their brother and their stepmother. Just trying to get everything in. Cassandra's father is a writer who wrote a fantastic first novel and then kind of dried up afterwards. And they're kind of dealing with this aftermath. They're no, they're not American. They're British and they're living in like this derelict castle and the tenant, like the owners come and it's basically about their interactions. Fantastic. Absolutely wonderful. Highly recommend it. For a slight change of pace, I think this might be the only, yes, this is the only young adult / children's fiction, which is A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. This is beautiful. I have the hardback edition, which I'm just going to slide this up. Looks fantastic. It is illustrated, which I think is why it's considered children's fiction. It's full of these like beautiful, let me find a better one. Beautiful illustrations. Honestly, I would recommend this for anyone dealing with grief. I thought it did a really good job of depicting what it's like to lose a parent from the perspective of somebody who has lost a parent. It was very, very well done. Would definitely recommend this. Yeah, I don't want to go into too much detail, but it definitely deals with grief and things like that. Highly recommend it. Not a light read. Don't be fooled by the fact that it's kind of magical realism mixed with like lots of pictures. It's definitely a deep read. Now for something infinitely lighter. Alan Bennett's The Uncommon Reader. This basically tells the story of Queen Elizabeth II refinding reading. It's a fictional account, obviously. Alan Bennett is, at least I know him mostly for being the playwright of The History Boys, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. I never actually saw it as a play, but I did see it as a movie many, many, many times. This is hilarious, really quick read. I like Alan Bennett so far from what I've read of him, so I would recommend that. Next up is The Bees by Lalaine Paul. This is a dystopian novel told about a beehive. It can be a little hard to get into just if you're not used to like reading about bees, obviously, but very well done. Probably my favorite? No, not my favorite dystopian. That's impossible. That's definitely got to be one of Orwell's. But a very good new entry to the dystopian fiction, and it's a standalone. It is not a trilogy. It is also literary fiction. It's not young adult. So if you are looking for dystopian but you don't want to read young adult, I recommend The Bees. Ah! My pile just fell. Next up is The 13th Tale by Diane Setterfield. I read this earlier in the year. I really enjoyed this. This was my first reintroduction to Gothic fiction after ignoring Gothic fiction for many, many years. I think it's because I read this earlier in the year that I was able to appreciate We Have Always Lived in the Castle so much. It's fantastic. It's contemporary fiction. Highly recommend it if you're kind of into Gothic. Her second work, I should say, Velvet in Black, doesn't stand up as well as The 13th Tale. I definitely fell in love with this. This is definitely, if you're a book lover, check this out. I'm just gonna pull the last 3 books up onto my lap so it's a little bit easier. Donna Tartt's The Secret History. If you like the classics, and by classics I mean classical Greek history, and you like murder mysteries, it's kind of like Dead Poet Society meets a murder mystery. Fantastic. Really twisted, really messed up. Absolutely love it. Sorry, my throat's getting dry here from all this talking. Next up is Raven Girl by Audrey, and I'm totally gonna butcher this last name, Knifengener, I don't even know. It's the lady who wrote the Time Traveler's Wife. It's kind of like a really well illustrated story. It's not a graphic novel. I would argue that this is not a graphic novel just because there are full pages of text next to beautiful creepy illustrations. Yeah, this tells the story of a raven who falls in love with a postman and then basically their daughter's life, and she is born human and she wants to turn into a raven. Really well done. I have the hardback, which is really beautiful. Would definitely recommend that, and most likely you will find it in the graphic novel section. I'm pretty sure I found this in the graphic novel section, but yeah, definitely check that out. If you didn't like The Time Traveler's Wife, ignore that. I've read The Time Traveler's Wife and I thought it was okay, but this is completely different. Now, for the last book, I don't even know how many that was. I should probably count them. Oops. Neil Gaiman's The Ocean at the End of the Lane. I read this at the beginning of the year, and honestly, oh, I love this book so much. I really want to reread this because I've been having a bit of a slump with Gaiman. I really didn't enjoy Neverwhere, and I'm finding Good Omens really tedious. I haven't picked it up in months, which is very unusual for me. Yeah. This is probably my favorite Gaiman. As much as I love American Gods and Anansi Boys and Stardust and Coraline, this is, I think, my favorite Gaiman. If you like magical realism, if you like creepy stuff, definitely check this out. Yeah, I don't want to give you a summary of the plot because it would kind of give it away, but definitely add this to your list. So those are my favorite books of 2014. Let me know in the comments below what your favorite books were. If there's any books that you're looking forward to reading in 2015, what your reading goals are. Basically, I am cutting down my reading challenge on Goodreads. I read 160 books last year, or this year, it's still technically this year. And my goal was 75. I'm cutting my goal down to 50, simply because I want to read some longer books, and I find having such a long challenge makes it so I tend to read shorter books, just so I can hit my challenge goal, but I really want to read a lot of Dickens next year. I want to try and finish my Drop Cap collection and read all of my Drop Cap collection. So yeah, I'm cutting down my goal to 50 books. And yeah, so that is basically what I loved in 2014, and I will see you guys next week with a video. Another thing, because starting next week, I am starting a work placement. I also work part-time and I'm back at school full-time. I'm going to scale back on videos to 1 a week. I still will post weekly videos. I may be able to post 2 a week depending on how quickly I'm reading, but I am going to be very busy. So I won't always have time to post 2 videos, but I'm going to try and guarantee at least 1. And I will see you guys next week with another video. Bye.